Hello and welcome to Nintendo Everything. I'm Easy and today I want to talk about some of my favourite roguelikes that have hit the Switch. You see, ever since the Switch has been out, I've kind of been playing more roguelikes than ever. And I think that's got to do with the Switch being so portable and quick to start up. Because the way I play roguelikes is kind of just very pick up and play. I might just play a round or two and then put it back down and come back to it the next night. So I'm going to talk about some of my favourites here. I encourage you guys to do the same in the comments. And I'm going to start the list with something that might be cheating a little bit because it's not actually out on the Switch yet, and that's Moonlighter. You see, Moonlighter is coming to the Switch later on this year, but I've played this on the PS4, not to completion. I just played a little bit and put it down and thought, you know what, I want to save this for the Switch. But I've played enough to kind of give a bit of an impression here. First of all, the game is kind of like a Zelda type roguelike experience. And the thing with roguelike experiences, as we're going to find out as we go through the list here, is that they're all very diverse and they all pick up genres or other genres very well. So this one's a Zelda-like. You're going to start seeing some FPSs, some roly-poly ones, if that makes sense. You're going to see 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania style ones. It just seemed to pick up these genres really well and adapt to them. Anyway, so Moonlighter is this Zelda-like top-down one. And what you're going to be doing is, at night time, you're going to be diving into these dungeons, dungeon crawling your way around, collecting loot, killing enemies, and making your way, I guess, back to the town eventually after you've collected enough loot. And then what you actually do is, when you arrive back at town, this loot that you've collected, you have to sell it because you're a merchant. And the shop mechanics is, I think, actually one of my favourite things about this game. They work so well. The idea is that you're going to be putting your stuff on these tables to sell, and you decide the price. But people are going to decide whether they like the price, they think it's too high, or they think it's too low, and they'll let you know. And you'll slowly adjust your prices and kind of understand how much things are worth over time. And if you're selling stuff for the right price, you're actually going to be getting quite a lot of money, which means that you can buy better items, better equipment, better stuff to prepare yourself for the dungeons at night, and you're going to progress through these dungeons more and more. Of course, when you get to a new dungeon, you're going to be getting new items, or the further down you get in these dungeons, and then you're going to have to start working out how much they're worth. And so it's kind of this progressive loop that's actually really enjoyable, has really unique character story, and the artwork is just beautiful. So make sure you keep an eye out for Moonlighter when it releases later this year. Now, the next game on my list is one that I'm sure a lot of you are playing at the moment, and that's Dead Cells. Now, Dead Cells, I've actually been playing a fair bit as well. I wish I could be playing more of this at the moment because it is so fun. It's what a lot of people are calling a Metroidvania style roguelike, although I think it relies much heavier on the Vania side, so the Castlevania side, than it does anything to do with Metroid. So obviously that means it's a 2D side-scrolling roguelike. And so what that means is you're going to be battling your way through these enemies, trying to make it as far as possible, and when you die, you get sent back to the start. Now, progression in this one is different to several other roguelikes that I've played. Some roguelikes allow you to keep your progression when you die by way of you actually keep some of that money and then you can spend that money on upgrades. This one isn't quite the same. You're actually going to collect cells as you're running through these, I guess, areas, and at the end of each area you can spend these cells to buy items. But these items that you're buying, you're not actually buying them, you're just unlocking them for future runs, so that in future playthroughs these items can drop for you and you can find them just running around. Now, I'm very indifferent on that. In one side of things, I really enjoy it because it makes every run feel different and I'm picking up different loot and I've got to kind of adapt my playthrough on the fly. And in another way, I kind of feel like, although I am getting progression because I'm unlocking better items that can drop, at the same time, I'm not getting that same permanent upgrade, which means that for, I guess, more casual players who want to get through this game might have an easier time if they could permanently upgrade their health or permanently upgrade their strength, where there's very few permanent upgrades that are outside of like health potions. To go back to stuff that I'm really enjoying about this game, the fact that it rewards both fast and slow gameplay is really important to me, and it's something that I really enjoy. Because you see, my first playthrough of this game, I actually went for, I think, about 47 minutes and only just made it to the first boss where I died at that point. But I had got a ton of upgrades, I'd got a ton of cells, and which means I bought a ton of items and different things that I could with that money, which was really good. But then the next run through, I decided to see if I could just get through it nice and quickly, which I could. I got to the next boss and I think it only took me maybe about 10 minutes, so this is on my second playthrough. And so I thought, wow, I could get there that fast. But at the same time, I hadn't collected all these upgrades or all these different items by discovering all these different paths. Plus, I hadn't got a lot of cells to upgrade myself with. But then, going through nice and fast, I could actually get to these time gates if I was quick enough that had more cells and more items behind them. And it also meant that I was quickly getting up to places where I'd already been. The other thing that really stands out to me about this game is the way the zones are randomly generated, because they're not just completely random and have a random maze to them each time. they're rather predictable in the way that they're generated. And that way I could always find paths that I kind of knew what was going to be down there. I could never be 100% certain, but I knew if I was heading in this direction that that's most likely the thing that I want is going to be there, whether it be the time gate, whether it be scrolls, whether it be a secret exit. I knew that, for example, with the second level, if I just went straight from left to right, I was always going to reach the end at the right side of the map. A ton of other people are really enjoying this game, so I don't think you really need me to sell you on it. One game that I think that I might be able to sell you on a little bit more that I don't see enough people talking about, especially when it first came out, was Immortal Redneck. Now this is strangely enough, an FPS roguelike. It's something that I had certainly never seen or played before or even heard of. And when first hearing about it, it was something in my head that I was like, that doesn't work. How would an FPS roguelike work? But it works really well. It works exactly how you kind of expect it to. So Immortal Redneck is going to have you diving into these pyramids, kind of clearing room by room of all these enemies. The rooms themselves are not randomly generated. They're picked from a pool, but the way the pyramid is laid out from room to room is. And that way you're trying to discover the map, find your way to the elevator, to work your way to the next level and eventually get to the top of the pyramid where there's going to be a boss waiting. But what makes this so damn fun is the gameplay itself, surprisingly enough. Apart from having this massive pool of weapons to kind of pull from, that all feel kind of unique and fun, plus the abilities that your different classes, and yes, there are different classes in this game that you can choose from, apart from their abilities and different weapons all working differently with each other, the actual gameplay itself is just top notch. And I think what really makes it for me is the aim assist, strangely enough. It's actually turned up quite high, which, I mean, if we were playing a multiplayer game here with other people, may be kind of annoying. But when playing Immortal Redneck, it's really satisfying because, especially playing on the Switch's controller or even with the Joy-Cons, you may get frustrated if you're missing a lot. But I found that a lot of the time, the aim assist kind of just kicked me in that little bit more that I needed to be able to hit the targets, making me feel like I was a bit more of a god playing this game, and a little bit less of this is my first time in an FPS. And the way you actually move about these levels is very reminiscent of old PC games, like if you know Quake or any games like that, Unreal Tournament. You have very fast movement, you have really long jumps with this really good double jump ability. And when I talked a second ago about Dead Cells being that game where the loot you collect is kind of what makes you powerful in that run, in this one it's very much what you choose in the first place. There are still bits of loot that are going to be scattered throughout each run, but majority of your upgrades and how strong you're going to be is going to be determined by the fact that you've upgraded your health, the fact that you've upgraded your strength, the fact that you've spent points in this skill tree to unlock different things. As well as there's also a shop that has a few other upgrades for you. So if you like FPSs and you like roguelikes, as much as the genres don't sound like they would blend, they blend extremely well, and I recommend giving Immortal Redneck a quick go. Now the next one on my list actually Has Been Heroes. Now this was a launch game for the Nintendo Switch, funnily enough, and it actually had some really unique roguelike mechanics. So I don't know quite how to explain what type of game this is without saying it's kind of like if you mixed roguelike and Plants vs Zombies together. Because what this basically is that you have 3 lanes and you have a hero in each one. And the zombies, funnily enough, are coming from the other side. And what you got to do is defend yourself from the zombies by using these 3 heroes to attack the lanes. And you can swap them around, and it plays into the mechanics a little bit doing that. And it almost has a little bit of Octopath Traveler in there, in the fact that each enemy actually has a shield type thing. And you have to break this enemy's shield to kind of knock them back and do extra damage. The game is actually really fun and really strategic because of this, and I really enjoyed playing all the way through it. There was only one thing that really stuck out to me as a problem for this, and that was by the time I got to the end of the game, the start of the game didn't have this problem at all, but by the time I got to the end of the game, I had really long playthroughs. So I'm talking maybe 3-4 hours even, just to just for my final playthrough of the game. The reason it gets longer and longer is that every chapter you do, you have to start from the start again, but you go through chapter 1 and then you go through chapter 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and so each playthrough is getting longer and longer to make it to the end. Of course, you're getting stronger and stronger, so it does become easier, but you're not really getting stronger in the way that you did in Immortal Redneck. It's more like Dead Cells in the way that you are unlocking more loot at the end of every run, and then that loot becomes available for the next playthrough. It's not my favourite system, again, because of how random it is, but it is that system that feels really good if you get the right items drop. So to quickly jump into another roguelike that is really hard to explain what genre this falls into, I'm going to be talking about Tumbleseed for a second. Now, Tumbleseed is a roguelike where you're basically rolling a seed up a hill, and you're doing that by, this seed is on like a tilting plane, and each one of the Joy-Cons will kind of tilt it up one way or tilt it up the other. It looks like it's using motion controls to kind of tilt it side to side, but don't get the wrong idea, it doesn't use that at all. Now, when the game launched, it was actually extremely hard, to the point where most people were put off of it, and there was a lot of news surrounding this game because of that. And then eventually they actually released a patch to kind of make it a little bit easier. They kind of put a tutorial mode in there, as well as a bit of an adventure mode, and a bunch of other stuff that made the game more enjoyable. And I went back and played it, and I actually had a really good time playing this game. By no means did I ever make it to the top of the mountain, because that was a feat to kind of get there, but there was more kind of helpful ways to do this and get there. So as far as roguelikes go, this is one of the most unique. The only other thing about it is, compared to the other ones on the list, there's no real unlockables for every time you make it up the mountain. You're kind of resetting your progress every time you do this and starting from scratch with none of the benefits from the last run. These type of roguelikes have their place, however I find the kind of more progression based ones a little bit more enjoyable and gives me a little bit more reason to come back at every single time. So as for the next one on my list, it's Enter the Gungeon. Now, it's kind of sounding like every one on this list is a really unique one, and this kind of joins the list again, because this is a top-down twin-stick shooter. And what makes this really unique is, as the name suggests, it's all about guns. So all these enemies you're going to be killing are either going to be guns, or they're going to be bullets, or that type of deal. The one thing it kind of shares in common with Immortal Redneck, I mean, Immortal Redneck's first person, and this one's obviously the top-down twin-stick, is that each time you go into a room, you get locked into it, and so it requires you to defeat all the enemies in that room before you can move on to the next one. I've actually bought it on the Switch, but I haven't poured a bunch of time into it because I played most of this on the, I think it was the PS4 that I bought it on. But so I'm just going off memory of recollection here, but I just remember the actual gameplay and the bullet hell of dodging all these bullets being really fun. So I think the last one that I want to shout out here is Crypt the Necrodancer. This is really unique, and again, it's one of those ones that I just don't know how to throw into a genre. Is it maybe roguelike dancing? I don't know. But the idea of this game is it's almost played like a tactics game. So you have this top-down view, you have a grid map, but every time you move, you have to move to this beat. So it's a constant song playing in the background, and you're rewarded for kind of keeping to the beat and moving to the beat. And of course, every time you move, an enemy's gonna move. So it kind of creates these situations where you've just gotta think on the fly. You don't have time to think. You've just gotta keep on moving and kind of plan out where it's going to happen in advance. So apart from the singing shopkeeper, who is just awesome, I think one of the things I enjoyed most about this game was how quick each playthrough of the game could kind of be. The thing is with roguelikes is, as I mentioned, I like to just do a short playthrough maybe before bed, or you know, when I've got a spare second, and then put it back down. And so this game made that really easy to do that. Unlike some games where sometimes it could be almost an hour commitment, or even more in Has Been Heroes case. So there are actually plenty more roguelike experiences to have on the Switch, but I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to leave it up to you guys now. What I want to hear is, what's your favourite roguelike on the Switch? And if you don't have one on the Switch, maybe let me know which one you like on another console. For me, I think the favourite one that I'm hoping comes to the Switch is Rogue Legacy. If this game ever receives a Switch port, I'm sure I'll go into deep detail about how much I love it, but this is the kind of one roguelike that I'm hoping kind of makes its way to the Switch. As always guys, thank you for watching. Remember, like button, subscribe button, you do you, and for everything Nintendo, stay tuned to Nintendo Everything.